Okay, let's dive into this number. $2.684 billion.
Mhm.
That's the projected global market size for roadside drug testing devices in 2025.
Mm.
I mean, it's maybe not a topic you bring up over dinner, right?
Probably not, no.
But when you hear a number like that,
Yeah.
you kind of realize, wow, this is a pretty serious industry working away behind the scenes.
Absolutely. And, what's really striking is that $2.684 billion,
Yeah.
that's not the peak. Not at all. It's more like the starting point.
Right.
We're looking at a market that's really set for some, well, explosive growth.
Exactly. And that is exactly what we're getting into today. We've managed to get our hands on a recent market research report,
Uh-huh.
and it basically gives us the roadmap to understanding this whole world of roadside drug testing.
Mm.
So our mission today, pretty simple. Cut through the data, the jargon, and figure out, okay, where does this market stand now?
Right.
What's pushing this big expansion? And what are the key trends you really need to know about?
And this report, it gives a really thorough view, looking all the way out to 2033. It breaks things down by region, by the types of substances tested, the tech involved, lots more.
Hmm.
It's a proper deep dive into a sector that, well, it touches on law enforcement, public health, tech innovation.
Mm-hmm.
It's all interconnected.
So think of us as your guides, digging through this data mine for you. We want to pull out the really interesting bits,
Yeah.
the insights that help explain why this market is becoming, frankly, so important. It's a fascinating crossing point between, our push for safer roads and some really smart technology.
Definitely.
So, yeah, the market's already huge. Where do we start to grasp the momentum?
Well, that 2025 figure, the $2.684 billion, that's the headline grabber for sure.
Right.
But if you look at where it's headed, the scale of the growth becomes really, really clear. The report suggests the global market could soar to, get this, $13.521 billion by 2033.
Whoa, hold on. 13.5 billion. That's not just growth. That's like a rocket launch.
Okay, pretty much.
Yeah. What kind of annual growth are we talking about to hit a number like that?
So the report projects a CAGR that's compound annual growth rate of a really strong 22.40%. That's between 2025 and 2033.
22.4%. Wow.
Yeah, and sustained growth like that, it's not exactly typical. It suggests some really powerful forces are driving it.
And one of the main engines here, according to the report, seems to be the increasing number of drug-impaired driving cases, which is a sobering thought, but it makes sense. As awareness of the problem goes up, so does the need for, effective tools like roadside tests.
Precisely. And when you look at how this demand breaks down geographically, it shows some interesting patterns, where the need is biggest now and where we might see the biggest jumps going forward.
Okay, lay it out for us then. Which parts of the world are leading the charge right now?
So in 2025, North America, they hold the biggest chunk of the market, over 37% of global revenue. That translates to about $993.08 million. And even being the biggest, they're still projected to grow at a 20.7% CAGR through 2033.
So North America is the current heavyweight. What about, say, Europe?
Europe's the next big player. They hold over 29% of the market. It's about $778.36 million in 2025.
Still very significant.
Yeah, and their expected growth is strong too, around 21.3% CAGR.
Okay, so the established economies are leading the way currently, but I feel like I read something about another region really picking up steam.
You did. You're spot on. The Asia-Pacific region, APAC.
Right, APAC.
They currently hold around 24% of the market, which is about $644.16 million in 2025. But the really interesting part, their projected CAGR, it's 25.5%.
25.5. Okay, so that makes them the fastest growing region then.
By a decent margin, yeah. Definitely the one to watch.
And that kind of tracks, doesn't it? With increased infrastructure spending, more focus on road safety, and rapidly developing economies there.
Exactly.
What about the rest of the world?
Well, South America has a smaller share, just over 4%. That's about $101.99 million in 2025. And projected growth is 23.2% CAGR.
Okay.
The Middle East is pretty similar, around 4% share too, at $107.36 million, growing slightly faster at 23.9% CAGR. And then Africa currently makes up about 2.2% of the market, so $59.05 million in 2025, with a projected CAGR of 22.7%.
So yeah, North America holds the biggest piece today, but it really sounds like APAC is where the major future expansion is happening.
Looks that way.
Okay, so the market's huge, getting huger, but what specifically are these tests looking for?
Right, good question. That brings us to the substances being targeted. The report says that drugs, as a general category, that's set to dominate the market.
Okay.
And that's mainly because law enforcement is using these tools more and more to specifically catch drug-impaired drivers.
And when we say drugs, what are the usual suspects these tests are screening for?
The common ones are cannabis, specifically THC cocaine, amphetamines, methamphetamines, opioids, and benzodiazepines.
So the ones known to really impact driving ability.
Exactly. Things that affect your cognition, your reaction times, stuff you definitely don't want impaired when you're behind the wheel.
And how do they usually do these tests on the roadside? What kind of sample are we talking about?
Saliva tests are the most common right now.
The saliva. Okay.
Yeah, they're popular because, well, they're non-invasive. You don't need needles or anything, and they give a pretty quick idea of recent drug use. That's crucial for, on-the-spot checks.
Makes sense. Quick and easy. Now, did the report mention any particular substance segment that's growing faster than others?
It did, yes. Amphetamine. That segment is highlighted as the fastest growing.
Amphetamine. Interesting. Why is that?
It probably reflects a growing concern from law enforcement about, well, how common amphetamines are becoming and how significantly they can impair driving. They seem to be focusing more on detecting those types of stimulants.
Okay, so it's not just what they test for, but how they collect the sample. Are there different methods?
Absolutely. So when we look at the sample types, saliva, as we said, has the biggest market share right now.
Because it's non-invasive and fast.
Exactly. It's kind of the default for immediate roadside checks.
Yeah.
And what's interesting, actually, is the underlying science of using saliva for tests is also moving forward.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, there's research looking into using saliva to detect things like biomarkers for heart failure. It hints that saliva testing might have much broader uses down the line.
Wow, that's unexpected. So saliva is the main one for now, but did the report mention any other sample type that's growing quickly?
It did. Urine testing. That segment is expanding rapidly, too.
Urine tests, okay.
Yeah, the advantage there is they offer a longer detection window for drug use compared to saliva. So, they can tell if someone used drugs maybe days ago, not just hours.
Right, which could be useful sometimes.
Could be. But the report does flag the practical difficulties of collecting urine samples at the roadside.
Yeah, I can imagine. Privacy issues, logistics.
Mhm.
Seems complicated out on a highway.
Very complicated, yeah.
So we've got what they test for, how they collect samples. What about the actual devices, the gadgets themselves, different types?
Definitely. The market breaks down by modality, too. And right now, handheld devices, they have the biggest market share.
Handhelds? Makes sense. Portable.
Exactly. They're popular because they're easy to use, they give fast results, and often they can screen for, multiple drug classes right there on the spot.
Seems like the essential tool for officers out on patrol. But didn't the report say another type is growing even faster?
It did, yeah. The standalone segment, that's projected to be the fastest growing.
Standalone. What does that mean exactly?
Think of these as maybe slightly larger units, often more suited for dedicated testing sites like police stations or sobriety checkpoints.
Ah, okay. Not as portable, maybe.
Probably less portable, but they often offer perhaps more convenience at a fixed site, immediate results, and they frequently pack in more advanced tech for, better accuracy, a bit more robust than the handhelds.
Gotcha. So handheld for mobile checks, standalone for more fixed locations. Okay, paints a good picture of the market itself. What are the big forces really driving all this growth?
The report points to several key drivers. First and foremost, government regulations and policies, specifically targeting drug testing for road safety.
Right. More laws, stricter enforcement.
Exactly. As more places create and enforce these laws, the demand for the testing tech just goes up naturally.
That makes total sense.
Yeah.
The law creates the need for the tools. What else?
Well, advancements in the drug testing technology itself, that's a huge driver.
How so?
We're seeing things get smaller, more portable, more sensitive. Breakthroughs in what they call multiplex testing.
Multiplex, meaning?
Testing for multiple drugs from just one sample makes the whole process way more efficient for law enforcement.
Okay, yeah, efficiency is key there.
And then, sadly, there's the documented rise in accidents that are directly linked to drug-impaired driving. That, unfortunately, acts as a really powerful motivator for more testing.
Yeah, it's a grim reminder of why this is all necessary, that last point being such a big driver. Are there any, headwinds, things slowing this market down?
Yes, the report does mention a couple of key restraints. One is simply the cost.
Ah, these devices aren't cheap, I assume.
Not generally, no. So the high cost can limit how widely they're adopted, especially maybe in regions with tighter budgets.
Makes sense.
And the other thing is, even though it's about safety, there are still ongoing legal and, well, ethical debates around how these drug testing programs are implemented.
Yep.
That can sometimes slow down adoption, too.
Right. Those cost factors and the legal discussions definitely highlight the complexities. It's not just about buying the tech.
No, it's not.
So looking forward then, what are the major trends shaping the future here?
Okay, two big trends highlighted in the report. One is just generally growing investment in law enforcement tech overall.
Right. Police forces getting more advanced tools across the board.
Exactly. And roadside drug testing fits right into that modernization push. But the other really fascinating trend is the development and use of AI, artificial intelligence.
AI. In roadside drug testing. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that. Sounds futuristic.
Well, it's happening now, actually. The report mentions a specific trial in the UK. It's called the AccuSensus AI camera system.
AccuSensus, what does it do?
It uses AI to analyze driver behavior through cameras, looking for patterns that might suggest impairment, weaving, inconsistent speed, that kind of thing.
So it spots potentially impaired drivers before a stop.
That's the idea. It allows police to be more targeted in who they pull over for alcohol and drug tests rather than just relying on random checks or visible signs after a stop.
That's a really proactive approach, using AI to flag potential issues. Very interesting. Okay, who are the main companies involved in this? It sounds like a competitive area.
It is pretty competitive, yeah. You've got a mix of big global companies and more specialized regional players. The report names folks like Abbott Laboratories, Dragerwork AG & Co.
KGAA.
Oh yeah, Drugger they do breathalyzers too, right?
They do. And also LifeLock Technologies, Inc. and SecureTech Detections System AG. These are seen as major players, often because they have, diverse products, big distribution networks, and they keep investing in R&D.
So established names in medical and safety tech. Any recent news or activities that kind of show where things are going?
Yeah, the report gives a few examples like Portable Diagnostic Systems, Inc. They recently got funding for their Integrity One analysis system.
Integrity One, what's special about it?
It uses microfluidics. It's designed for really rapid identification of recent drug use right there during a traffic stop. So it's signals that move towards even faster, more precise on-the-spot results.
Microfluidics, like a lab on a chip kind of thing.
Essentially, yeah, analyzing tiny amounts of fluid very efficiently. Really cutting-edge stuff for roadside safety.
Wow. Okay, what else is happening?
Well, over in the UK, their Department for Transport launched something called the MDTI Demonstrator Competition.
MidT.
Yeah, the goal is basically to push innovation in roadside evidential drug testing. They're looking for tech that gives rapid results that are actually admissible in court, right there at the roadside.
Court admissible on the spot. That would be huge.
It would be a game changer for enforcement, absolutely. Streamline the whole process.
And didn't you mention something about Australia earlier? Or was that the report?
Yes. In New South Wales, Australia, the police there have been doing a huge number of roadside drug tests, like over 183,000 recently.
Wow.
And found a significant number of positive results. But importantly, they've also brought in a faster testing method. Takes about 15 minutes at the roadside now.
15 minutes? That's pretty quick.
Yeah, it shows that clear focus on just making the whole process faster and more efficient out in the field.
So it really feels like the global trend is towards more testing, faster testing, and tests that hold up better legally.
That sums it up pretty well, yeah.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. If we were to boil it down, what are the core takeaways for you looking at this roadside drug testing market?
I think the main thing is just that remarkable growth path. It's huge. And it's fueled by this global push for safer roads, coupled with technology that keeps getting better and better.
Right.
We've seen how different regions play a role, with APAC really standing out as a growth engine. And we've looked at, the different test methods, saliva, urine, and how the devices themselves, handheld, standalone, are evolving.
And what's the one insight from all this that really pops out for you, the kind of aha moment?
For me, it's probably the sheer speed of the tech innovation.
Yeah.
Things like the AI analysis we talked about, the microfluidics. It really points towards a future where detecting drug impairment could become incredibly precise, really efficient, and just seamlessly woven into how we manage transport safety.
It definitely feels like this market's boom is a strong signal of a wider societal focus, right?
Yeah.
Making roads safer using technology.
Excellent.
So as these technologies get better and more common, what's the big question we should leave our listeners thinking about?
I think the key question for you, the listener, to consider is this. As these roadside drug testing technologies get more sophisticated, more widely used,
Hmm.
what are the broader impacts on society?
Hmm.
How do we make sure that our vital quest for road safety stays balanced with other really important things like privacy, like individual liberties? It's a market driven by a critical need, for sure, but its expansion definitely raises these big questions for us all to think about.